So now let's go back to the design view, and I'm going to add the two other divs. So again, I'm going to go up to Insert, Layout Objects, Div Tag, and this time it's also slightly different. I don't want to choose at insertion point. I only do that for my container or wrapper ID, div with an ID, because that's the only one that's just going to go right onto the page for this blog style layout. For the header, I'm going to choose the one that we just did after start of tag. But this one, I don't want it to go after the start. I don't want it to be inside my header. I actually want it to go right after my header. So this time I'm going to choose after tag. After which tag? The header. So it's going to fall right after it. I'm going to give it the ID of main. And now I'm going to set my click on the new CSS styles button so I can start setting my attributes. This page, I'm just confirming this document only, and it is # main. Click OK. So here I'm going to go and put in a background color. And I have a dark gray. And now go to my box category. And I'm going to put in a width of 480 pixels. So my main content div is going to be a little bit smaller than the rest of my divs. So in this one, because I want it to be centered, I actually do need to go to the right and to the left and put on auto, and that's going to center this div within the bigger one. On the worksheet, I did write to put the auto left and right for both your header and your footer, and you don't actually have to do that because they're both going to be right within your container. And as long as they're taking up the same amount of space of your container is doing all the centering. Now, I was going to add a padding of 5 onto this as well. So I'm going to put images in my main content, and so they don't go directly up against the edges. So my width at 480, I have a background color, I've centered it, and it has a padding. And click OK. And click OK. And so now here it is. This is the content for my main area. So the last one to add is the footer. And notice how it's not inside my header, it comes right after. So I want my footer to come right after. So I'm going to go to Insert, Layout Objects, Div Tag. And I want it to be after the tag of main. They're following each other. And it's going to have the ID of footer. Click on the new CSS styles button. Confirm this page. Click OK. And I'm going to go into my background category. Give it a color. You can choose whatever color you want. I just had some that I had already picked out. And I'm going to give it, in the box category, some padding. Padding of 5 all around, and a top margin of 10. It gives a little bit of space. And we can adjust some of these numbers so you can see what they're doing exactly. And click OK. And so I didn't set a width, so I don't need to put the left and the right to auto, because my width is going to be the same as my container. It's just going to fill up that space. Let's click OK. And click OK. And now here's my footer at the bottom. If I decide I wanted to change my attributes for any of these, I can always go back over to my Styles panel, click on any of them, and if I have this window expanded, you should be able to see the attributes. Or I can double click them, and that window comes up again. If I made a mistake, although this is kind of off my screen right here, I could click on one of the CSS styles if I want to get rid of it, and click on the trash can. So if I did add a property of, let's say, width to my footer, if I just start to type in W, I have a whole list of properties. And just to see if I put in 300 pixels, now I put in 300 pixels, so it is a fixed size that's smaller than my container, and it is not centered because it's smaller. So I would need to go to my box category, and under the margins put my auto for the left and for the right. But if I don't have any sort of attributes for a specific width set for that div, then it's just going to fill up whatever space of the container. Okay, now we're going to start adding some content to our header. So I'm going to put in a title here. This was actually the name of a project. So I'm going to call this piecing all together, and I'm going to highlight it and go down to my properties inspector. And under format, I'm going to give it the heading 1 or the H1 attribute. And then I'm going to go in and style that afterwards. So first I'm going to go back up here and hit the enter key to come down. And I have a bunch of text I'm just going to put in. And I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go to this page where I already have this assignment done and just copy it and paste it in. Now just to look at our tags here, this is an H1 tag. You can see if I click on that, only this is selected. This is the P tag. So if I wanted to style these things, if I wanted to have this text to be a different attribute, I would be trying to style any H1 tag that is within my header. So something very specific. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the images into our main content. So I'm going to open up the folder called Images for Layout, and I'm just going to start dragging them in to this gray box one by one. And now I'm going to also delete that text that says the content for ID main goes here. So let's drag these guys in one by one. And what you'll see is, unlike a table, it will not expand in width just because I have more content. And a table would do that. But a div is actually going to stay the width that you asked it to. Okay, so I have all of my images in here. Okay, now I need to start styling them. It doesn't really look very nice. All my images are right up next to each other, and they all have a little bit of upper leftitis as well. So what we're going to do is called creating a compound selector. So we're combining these two things. We're combining both an ID and an HTML tag. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a selector that targets specifically anything that is an IMG within my div of ID, my div with the ID of main. Okay? So I'm going to go, if I have an image selected in that, and I go over to my CSS Styles panel and I click on the new CSS rule, it actually kind of guessed already. Now it came up with this very, very long name. It's saying if you are within the container, and you are within the main, which is in the container, and you're an image, then you're going to take on whatever attributes we said. We don't need it to be quite so specific. We're just going to I'm going to delete container, and it's perfectly fine if it starts with main and then image. So the syntax to pay attention to is it has to start with a pound, and then you're going to say your ID, then a space, then whatever the HTML is that you're targeting within that div ID, okay, which is the IMG. And mine says advanced because I'm in CS3, and if you're in CS5, it's going to say compound, this document only, and click OK. So now I'm going to want to add padding, which is done in my box category, and let's add a padding of 5 pixels. And hit apply, and now you can see the spacing works out a lot better in between. Okay, so I'm going to click OK. And now we're going to do the same thing. And we want to target the H1 rule that is specific to my ID of header. And why do that? Why not just create a rule for H1? Well, because maybe I want my H1, maybe I'm going to put an H1 in here or an H1 in here, and I want them all to look different. Same thing with the image. Maybe I'm going to put an image up here, but I don't want that image to have a padding of 5. I want it to have a border around it or some other attributes. So this way I can be very specific for the different IDs. One of the rules, by the way, about an ID is you can only have it once on your page. So in other words, I cannot have another header, and I cannot have another main content or another footer. If I have something on my page, let's say I want to put another box right after this that looks like this one, I can't put another one that's called main. I have to call it something else. I'd call it gallery or second main or something like that. So only one div with an ID per page. Okay, so I'm going to write a rule, and again, because I was in my H1, Dreamweaver tried to guess for me, and I don't need it to be quite so specific. I'm going to get rid of that part, and it's just going to start with the pound header. So anything that is within this div with an ID of header that is an H1 is what I'm targeting. And click OK. And under text decoration, I'm going to put underline. I'm going to choose color of white because the rest of my text is gray. And I'll pick a font family. Just something that's different from the rest of it. And click OK.